all of, it was a manuscript. We drew out all of the war implements that were described by Vegetius in 382. And I said, this is 1496. I can tell because it's dedicated to the Dauphin of France, Francis I, who was actually, he was the one who married Scotland, Queen of Scotland, Elizabeth's cousin.
Mary,
Queen of Scots, right? Yeah. So he married Queen of Scots. So that Francis I married Mary, Queen of Scots, and so that was printed when he was first born.
And an interesting reference is when the Gutenberg Bible was first printed.
1452.
Yeah. So this is 30 years after.
Now
the very first
that
printing.
one below it is actually older. That's from 1492. It actually was printed before Columbus had come back from the Americas and reported.
So this one is 1492, and this one was
I
what?
think this is 1492, 1493. This is 1496.
1496.
Okay. Now, the fun thing about this particularly is there's a specific weapon that's shown in Fiore's manuscript where he has his powder coming out of the pole. And everybody said, no, it can't possibly, that's wrong, it's fake, he was dreaming it up. Well, in book 8, chapter 10 in that, it talks specifically about how a gentleman walked in, two guys were going l'outrance, which means you're going to the death. Actually, when they did these duels, they would put a gallows outside the area. And the person who lost was still alive, they'd hang him. And that was serious stuff. So in any case, he talks specifically about one particular time wherein two knights went in, and one knight actually had powder hidden in his top of his poleaxe, and he put it in the opponent's face. And a huge fight broke out amongst the jury watching this battle because they said, this is against the ancient laws of Lombardy because you brought in a hidden weapon. And so he was executed. But that's beside the point. The guy who brought in the powder was executed because he had brought in this.
Broke the rules.
He broke the rules. He blinded the other guy, but he broke the rules. So
did he kill the other guy when he blinded him?
No, he didn't kill him, he's blinded. But this specifically talks about that weapon. So a lot of people in the medieval martial world will say it doesn't exist. When in fact, this particular book by Pueto, he wrote it in 1430s. He went through all of the records of the counties, of the churches, ecclesiastical records, of city records, of county records to find all of the references to combat. And he wrote all down. And actually, he also, it's called Duelo del Rey because what he did is he set up, or he documented the rules of who could fight who. There's a great movie out called The Duelists. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
I've seen it.
Now, the duelists, what happens in one particular scene is that you've got two people, and one guy is a major. He says, well, you're a major, he can't fight you. But then, because if the other fellow was a captain, he couldn't challenge a major. So there were rules. A major could not challenge a general. No way. Generals could challenge generals. You had to keep within your rank. And so for a second, he thought he was out of trouble of having to duel this guy. Then he looked over, and the guy was also a major. So in any case. So that was the basic rule set from that point forward. It's the Duelo del Rey, it's the duels, the kings, the princes, and the knights. Okay, so let's move on. Unless somebody has studied his Agrippa.
Which I have.
That's Agrippa. That's an original 1553 copy of Agrippa.
Oh my
It
gosh.
has the original bindings.
Whole thing.
Yeah,
So
that's
an
my
original.
favorite Agrippa because that whoever in period, that's what it was. So
I
that-
see you
so
using, but
so
there
the
is
cover.
defensive.
That's the binding
touch
and
it.
cover.
Yeah.
That
I see.
someone
I see
in
defensive.
period used
Oh,
that.
well, I thought using that. was
That
like
leather
Capitero.
binding.
Well, I considered Roger Twain. I thought I used Thibault. No. What does he use against him?
Princess Bride reference.
Agrippa, which I have. Now,
I actually
I will
just got
show
Schwinger's
you-
translation of that.
I will show you why. And Diego Montoya lost. in The Princess Bride fight. He had the 1603 edition. If you look between this and that, it's the same thing. Come look.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Look at the huge difference between the two. It's the exact same
huge
plate.
difference.
Okay, the reason being is this is the Penguin series.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody took that 50, 60 years later and reprinted it. Now, so this, the fellow who wrote it was long since dead.
Mm-hmm.
This was written under the gentleman who wrote the book. This was written off of that book by a second-class carver who just said, okay, I'll try and make it.
It's a completely
Completely
different
different.
stance, and
So-
everything's different.
And you look at it, it's whatever the guards are, the exact same guards. So the point being is that it is a complete, you cannot look at books that come later. They do not recreate correctly what somebody was actually showing. Okay.
The only thing that's the same is long sword and a dagger and two naked
Exactly.
guys.
Look
Other than
at
that, they're
his
completely
feet.
different.
Look at his feet. See, he's like this, right? And this guy's like this.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different stance. We know that. We
Let me
that in
present the
Studio,
larger
we know that in
targets
Western martial
to
arts.
my opponents.
All right. So then we go on to the next book, which is Alfieri. Now, Alfieri is a very famous fencing master from the 1600s. In fact, he also wrote a book on flag flinging, on how to defend yourself in case, flags. Literally,
Flag
banana.
flinging?
He would throw up flags. He talked about how to use a flag. If you're carrying the flag for the unit, you had to defend yourself. And you had to know how to do this. So a lot of that flag flinging they do that you see in like the videos of modern videos where the guys are walking, that's all.
That's
based
a
on
real thing?
That's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Alfieri
Wow.
wrote a book on that. So this is a fabulous book this is from 60. What year is this? 1604. I don't know. 16. I'll find out. Okay. 1640. Oh, I was late. So that's 1640. Le Sherma. Okay.
Wow.
So you're looking at books that are how many hundred years old? Huh?
1640. When is that relative to
Thibault?
Thibault?
20 years later. 10 years later. 15 years later,
That's
actually.
the first thing I tried to translate.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
one small section.
Now, we go on to the 18th century, and here we have a fellow by the name of Angelo. Angelo was he had two brothers. They were all raised in northern Italy. They all learned fencing from their grandfather, and they were so good that they finally ended up going to France, and Angelo particularly was excellent at teaching sword work, but he was more known for horseback riding, not for fencing. Nonetheless, he ended up moving over. He was following his love, who was an actress, and she moved to London, so he moved to London too. And he got in the upper echelon of everybody. His son, which is Henry Angelo, this was actually printed by Henry Angelo, not his father. His father had one that was this big, it was all in French. And Henry came in and said, no. We're going to print it in English. And generally speaking, these books were made for the people who were attending the school, and they would buy it as their instructional book. Yeah. Now, I also brought out at this point in time, which is very interesting. So we've got this. Actually, if you go in the restroom, you'll see a lot of this particular fellow's work, Angelo's work, Domenico Angelo's work, ended up in the D'Alembert, the Doyen d'Alembert's encyclopedia from 1750, 1760. They actually wrote to Angelo and said, can we use your fencing work in our encyclopedia to show fencing? I've got a copy of the encyclopedia in that particular section upstairs. So it shows exactly, they took this, copied it off, and printed it. Yeah. Now I just brought out something I just picked up recently, which is this particular book, which is the System and Art of Defense, wherein, going on, it says it's by a fellow by the name of Edward Blackwell, late master of that science, printed in Williamsburg, 1734, in the United States. So this is a fencing work from 17...
From the colonies.
Yeah.
34.
Yeah. So this was a book for, how's he put it? It's for gentlemen,
The dialogue
promoters, and
between-
lovers of that science in North America.
A dialogue between Meifer and
Yeah,
Scholar?
what they did is they'd have a lot of treatises had a situation, like for example in Angelo's work back there, not Angelo, Agrippa's work. You have a
Just-
dialogue. Well, what do you think about this? Well, I think this way. Well, who's the famous master?
Well, like Saviolo,
Silver, not Silver.
Saviolo.
Saviolo has this discourse between, well, what do you think about this? Well, I think if somebody does this, I'll do this. Well, what do you think about if I do this? Well, somebody's going to do that. So he has this discourse.
The Iani does that too.
Does that word mean like student or something?
Yeah, what?
The Meifer or what? I can't read.
Master.
Oh, master and
Master
scholar.
scholar, okay.
Oh, okay.
Then I bring in 1800. This is Cordelet's work from fencing. And you can see how it went from there, which is battlefield, armor. Here you all of a sudden see armor disappearing. And no longer. So why would armor disappear? Because people are shooting each other.
Yeah.
What's the point of getting on there when somebody has an arbalist to go right through your armor? Now, that doesn't mean that people didn't show up with armor, because Henry VIII was known to wear his armor on the field, but he's always in the back. And it's because people could shoot him. So it was a matter of showing wealth, not a matter of combat value. In fact, what's interesting is if you go through all these books, you'll see that this is a shorter sword. This is a short sword, that's a rapier. Over here he's using one-handers and two-handed blades. So things are changing in part, I think, because of the roads.
The roads?
Roads. Rich people can't get into their carriages with this huge rapier sticking out.
Oh.
So what do? Roads came in, allowed for carriages therefore for the rich, and what did the rich do now? They try to, drive their electric car, whatever. They change to show their wealth, and so everybody else wants to copy them.
So you gotta cut your sword down
Now,
to size.
his son's godfather was a fellow by the name of the Prince of Wales, who became George III of England. So Henry Angelo, who actually printed this particular book, his godfather was 4 dukes and George III of England. Our crazy fellow that was in North American wars and all. But that shows where these people were. He was making $750,000 a year just off the people who were living in his fencing school. However, it wasn't just a fencing school, it was also a riding school, because riding and fencing were the two requirements.
750,000?
Yeah, it was just made out of people who were living in
Is
his...
that today's dollars or back then?
Yeah, today's dollar. I figured it out.
Okay.
I went through and went back and said, okay, how many pounds and how many people were there, and multiply it
Okay,
out. So at least
okay.
750 are just on the people living in there. But that excludes all the people who are coming in, like the prince and all the dukes coming in and paying him to train them to ride. So riding was a really important part of all this. Okay, so that's interesting, and you've got this book here, and this is, of course, Coeur de Lois, is all of a sudden you see people really shooting each other. And there's no reason really to have a sword except for trying to continue on the play, and you end up with one more would be the AFLA, American Fencers League of America rules.
Yeah, it really looks like fencing.
Okay, it does, doesn't it? It is. So you go from there. This is 1780, and this is 1850, I think. So 90 years difference, and all of a sudden you have a huge change. Now over here is an original copy of Thibault. This is the largest book ever printed on fencing. Actually, it was considered the greatest book printed in the 16 and 1700s period. And you can see the work. I love it when you twist on some of these and you see. Now I wash my hands twice, so I'm okay. I actually don't. When people that do handle these, they don't wear gloves, and the reason being is that you lose your tactile sense, and so people actually ripped pages, not in my book, so I'm not do it. But it's really fascinating the amount of work that was put into this. And you were asking me, he actually goes through and say, okay, so Zachary starts at this position. He calls this guy Zachary. He calls this guy Alexander. Okay, so Zachary tries this and Alexander does this against him. And then Alexander or Zachary knows what he's doing, so he does this. So then he goes through the whole system. If Alexander starts the attack, so he goes, okay, Alexander starts and Zachary does this. And so Alexander, to respond to what Zachary does this. On the other hand, in some of these, Zachary starts the attack. And then, okay, so Alexander has to do this, and he feels it based upon the amount of pressure he's got going against him. It's called the sentiment of the blades.
Like we were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and back here now, what's fun is he gets a little bit more, let's see if I can get, we're still in, here he's using daggers. So here is Zachary, this is Alexander, and this is Zachary, and Zachary has a dagger and a rapier. And that was common in the Italian system, whereas he said anybody uses a dagger is just showing how bad they are at fencing because they really don't know what they're doing. That was his attitude, okay? But some of this stuff is just magnificent. What I like particularly is some of the, let's see if I can find it.
So there's copper plates for every single page, right?
And yeah, absolutely. And they were done, remember they were carved in reverse.
In reverse.
So they drew
That's
them
amazing.
out, carved in reverse. It took years.
Even the writing is in reverse?
I don't know. It would have to be.
I guess it would.
You carve the
Block
black
prints.
lines,
Black
but the
prints.
writing has to be reversed.
Now this is an interesting page.
Oh yeah.
I love
It's
this.
indicative of the thought process of
Can you-
the
can you-
Renaissance. Actually, this is Baroque.
Can you push that down so
This
we can...
this is not this is people don't realize this is not Renaissance. This is Renaissance fencing. No, it's not. It's Baroque. The Renaissance ended with the surrender of Rome in 1530, 1540, something like that. And
1527, the sack of Rome.
that's when the Renaissance and Baroque took over because the Catholic Church lost a lot of its strength, and so people were able to grow out of that and it changed things. Okay, so what you've got, this is Musashi talks about these. You've got fire, water, earth, and wind. And so you've got the four humors. And that was very basic in all of their understandings. In fact, that's why actually, I know you're on a tangent, but George Washington died because what they would do is Hippocrates wrote about how a human had, there's four variants of human personality. There's phlegmatic, help me out, choleric,
sanguine, and melancholy.
okay.
Well done.
And you have to fence against them. In fact, there's a book, I don't have it up here now. He actually wrote how you fight. You can tell what a person's is like, and then you have to do a particular methodology to fight against them.
Is it Agrippa that has, or is it?
Pietro
No,
Monte.
no.
Monte talks about that.
Yeah,
a lot.
Monte does. He talks about how when you fight in a battle, you have to have.
One of the other masters that begins with an A. It's either Alfieri or
I don't know.
Agrippa.
Definitely not Agrippa. Agrippa's all about geometry.
So here
Yeah,
he talks
he's
about
got
the
a-
12.
A fixation with math. Versus medicine.
You've got
Very short
all the
verses.
various astrological signs. And what's interesting is that I realized or found out that all of our hours and our months are based upon the Babylonian understanding that it took 11 years, 11.9 years for Jupiter to go around the sun. And so everything we do is 12-year basis. And it's 12 years because of the Babylonians. People don't understand we have 12 hours in the morning, 12, because the Babylonians did this. Not because of anything else. You know, the reason why they say that Christmas is there's a lot of argument, why is Christmas 25th of December? It's because you had 12 months, and every month had 30 days, exactly 30 days. This is from the ancient Jewish text. And then at the beginning of the year, you had 5 or 6 days that didn't count. Okay? So every day was 30 days. Now, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, it says, and God created light and saw that it was good. And verse 3 says, and God divided light from darkness. In the medieval and ancient period, divided meant equally. So when is equally? When is light and darkness equal?
The equinox.
Exactly. Now, in the old Jewish calendar, that was the 25th of March. What is exactly 9 months later? Jesus
Christmas.
was bringing light into the world. Ergo, he was conceived on the 25th of March and came out the 25th of December because he was bringing light into the world. Because light was coming in and not disappearing. That's why Christmas is on the 20th. It's not all this stuff about Sylvanus. that's the reason why. I found that out from reading Isidore of Seville from 320 somewhat AD. He's a brilliant, where he had the etymologies, where all the words come from. It's fascinating when you read through it. Oh my God, they knew about an atom. He talked about an atom. This is 382 AD. He said the atom is the smallest thing that something can be divided into. It can't get divided smaller than that. You can't see it, but there's atoms. He literally says there's an atom. This is 382 AD.
So you already used the word atom?
Atom. He literally used the word atom.
Atomos, more or less means uncuttable.
Undivisible.
Yeah,
or
undivisible.
something.
Yeah.
What they thought the atom was different, but they thought they were atoms.
But they understood there was
But there
some
was some
fundamental building block.
fundamental,
Yeah.
undivisible.
So literally
Four
knew.
atoms.
They
Water
knew
atom,
this stuff.
fire atom.
And from that, I
atom,
read
and
through
air
the.
atom.
That's wild.
This is where I learned about
Fire atoms are
from March
So you
to
can't touch them.
December. I learned about it because he wrote
You
about
laugh, but that's what they
specifically.
bought.
This is
No,
why
I'm
people
agreeing.
understand this. How can they not understand that Jesus was born on the 25th? Because he was conceived at the time that light was entering the world. He was light. He was there at creation. And now the reason they got off on all the geometry stuff, you can see geometry all over this place, is because God created the earth using a compass. And so geometry was the basis of understanding God. And so therefore they poured their minds into trying to understand mathematics. And that's why I have all these different numbers. And this is fun because Jupiter, okay, so there's Jupiter. We talked about Jupiter being the basic guy. And also, Jupiter is the just. Louis XIII, who financed this, was called the just. So maybe this is a political statement. Now, you have a
Politics and
monkey.
fencing? What?
Yeah, you have a monkey.
When did
Politics
that
and
happen?
money. We're talking about fencing. You've got the monkey, the dog, and the turtle. Now this heart back here is actually also the symbol of Jupiter. That was his animal. But what you have is a monkey always copies what it sees.
Yeah.
A dog is absolutely loyal. And the turtle was considered, you also have the tortuga, so it's great defense, because that's what the Romans would go into with that tortuga.
Yeah.
Also, they thought that it was the animal that lived the longest, it was the most intelligent, or the most wise, not intelligent.
What about
So therefore,
the horned?
that's was the heart was his
The
symbol.
heart? Okay.
So therefore you have loyal repetitive actions of what you see will give you the right defense. Isn't it interesting? So there's a huge amount of information that is in this specific work that really gives you an insight into the mindset of the Baroque period people.
That's like kung fu, ultimate skill through infinite repetitive repetition.
That's exactly, and loyally repeating what you see is going to give you the defense you need.
And there's the other kung fu metaphor too, because I mean, kung fu uses animals to describe not just fighting styles, but like methods of approaching the fight.
And then you have all, like I said, all the various. You look through here, you're going to see the hours show up. All the hours are here, and the hours also apply to the various astrological signs. So this book was apparently it was the greatest book printed in the 1600s and 1700s. Period. If you look at some of the work, I'm trying to find one of the plates that has actually the shading. I don't know how they did this, but it is absolutely incredible. Oh, here we go. So we've got shading coming down here, and sometimes these people are in the dark, and sometimes in light. There's better ones that have greater shading. But sometimes they're on the wall, sometimes they're in front, they're on the wall, sometimes they're hanging from a.
You got the tapestry guy.
Yeah. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Chuck.
How many different patrons are there
were at least
roughly?
six. So you can see here, these guys are shaded out. And these guys, see partial shade, partial. And you're doing this with a ding, 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 backwards. So it gives you an idea.
So what does that mean that they're
No,
that
it's
they're
nothing.
in
It's just
shadows?
the shades here. The sun's coming down here, and they're in the shade. So therefore, it's showing just how brilliant you are to represent what's actually going on.
You see
Oh, it's showing
shadows.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, my favorite, this is one of my
Do that. They
favorites.
have carefully mask around it, and then acid etch just that one part where they want shade. but not so much that you completely obliterate it and turn it into a black triangle.
Wow.
My favorite one is this one, which when you fight somebody who has a gun. Let's see if I can find the one.
Oh, the zigzag.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
there's
Okay, here we go.
rapier versus archivist.
Okay, so this is what happens. If the fellow's sitting there, what you do is you start off, you pull your blade, and you run, and you turn so that your left side is forward, as and this way as possible, and you do the zigzag move. Okay, and he tries to shoot you. You knock his blade out of the way. You knock his sword out of the way. And then you stab him. Okay, so here he is sitting here. He's trying to load his gun. He gets his gun up. By the time he gets his gun up, you're already on top of him. Okay, now here's the guy who's already shooting. So instead of running this way, you have to run fully sideways. And you have to turn this way. You don't just do this movement. All right? Now, here's the third one, of course, is that this guy's got this blunderbuss already ready. And so you have to move a different way entirely. See how he's turning sideways? I like this picture particularly because it shows Amsterdam, Antwerp in the background.
I saw that.
What's interesting is this fellow right here is being hung. There's a body hanging from a noose right there.
Oh, there is.
Oh, wow.
See it? Right there?
Mm-hmm.
There's a fellow hanging from a noose. And so this is indicative of, this is Amsterdam and Antwerp at the time that this was made. They were recreating what they actually had going on with the smoke, and you can see all the different boats, the shipping going on. There's a ship going out. So it's not just this is really history. Mm-hmm. You can look at this and not just you can take these guys out and you're going to see the entirety of what's going on. So, this is a very rare book. I think there's 12 in the Western Hemisphere.
Is this when they have to fire it with matches?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I have a book in there from 1728 that's written by PDF Girard, who actually goes through exactly how you should hold your match stays over here as you're going to launch your grenade. It's really hilarious.
Avoid the sparkles.
Yeah, he literally goes through this. If you're going to throw your grenade, he was the captain general of the king's fleet. And so he wrote a book and said, this is how you fight. He says, this is how the Italians stand. So this is how you fight against them. This is how the Germans stand. This is how the Spanish stand. And so this is how you fight against them. And at the very end, he goes through and says, here's the flag, guys. And here's also what grenadiers do. Grenadier. And so they carry their match in one side of them, and they carry their grenades on the other side. And it shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's literally instructive on how to, because I'm sure more than one person blew themselves up.
I bet.
So, yeah, it's really fascinating. But this is a great, for me, it's a great insight into the thought process of the people at the time. You go back here and you see some of these amazing moves, but you're not going to see a lot of leaning by the fellow with that is called Alexander. And Alexander was an actual person, I think. What's interesting also in this is that there were numbers of houses working on this, and they all used, like, for example, you can see this sort of Greek, and there's a Roman guys, and there's modern guys. It's just, it's
You see the difference in the hand positioning?
And so this hand
There's
change,
lots
see his
of-
finger pointing down?
There's lots of hand positions.
If you
There-
don't do
there's lots
this,
of hand positions.
oh yeah, if you don't do this, this person, you cannot succeed against this person. If I'm like this, and you push against, push that way,
Yeah.
just push your hand on that, push that way, right? You can, right?
Yeah.
Now push.
Yeah.
Now push.
It's different zone.
It's totally different. And
And
so
it's
he's
very
got,
intentional with the
Yeah,
black behind
absolutely.
it. They want you to see that.
they want you to see that. They want you to see every single aspect of the arm and the hand and everything exactly what's supposed to be. But I mean, I want to get into some of the. I think it's chapter 4. Let's see. To emperor, kings, princes, dukes, counts, and other seigneurs and nobles, other knights and nobles. Okay. Now, this is a fun plate, and he's trying to show the exact physiology of the human body and how to measure. It's using the golden ratio, pretty much. on how long your sword has to be, how the circle has to be. What he's trying to show the distancing relative you to the other. So in suyo, for example, you have to be at a specific distance in order to be able to cut, and that's what he's talking about. If somebody's here and you have to be at a particular well, your angulation will bring you into an appropriate space. I want to go
like this move. If your sword was too long,
no, it's not
you
that. He's
wouldn't-
just showing if your foot's back, this is where you can stab. Over here, you see you can stab. This is exactly the distancing. This guy was to the millimeter exact distance on things. I wanted to show one last page here. It's just, I don't know if it's just beautiful. Some of the stuff that's in this is just incredible work. Look at this particular plate. Look at the work in here, the birds and the trees and all these different stances.
you look at stuff like that and you just know there's secret information in there.
Yeah, ratio. It doesn't say
It
ratio.
looks
beats
very much like a Mason symbol.
Yeah.
Vincent. Victorious is ratio over, let's see, ratio is victorious over passion. Yeah, so he's saying don't get so upset about things. I think I wanted to go to 3. I want to go 3. This is really fast. Look at see the shading come down? And here you have this part is shaded because the light's coming through this window. I mean, look at this. This is incredible work.
Being split there because there's pillars, and so
you see this pillar going off this direction, and you have this light beam come down here. So sometimes these people down here are shaded. Originally, I thought there were black fellows in here. It might be shading. I mean, you'll see a lot of different races appear in these books. You'll see blacks, you'll see Hispanics, you'll see Europeans. I mean, he's actually trading in southern Spain. He is from Amsterdam. He'd go down and buy wool. He was a wool merchant. So he'd go down to southern Spain where they raise a lot of sheep and then bring it back to Amsterdam. And so he actually, though some people say he trained with a fellow by the name of Carranza, who was a fellow by the name of Destreza, and it was a mathematical computation put within the center of fencing. So, yeah, I just picked up a book that's from 1670. That's one of the basic books of something called Destreza. So yeah, see, look at that. It's just incredible. Like I said, this is how you draw your blade. If you got distance, and if you don't have distance, this is how you back up. Here you're going forward. Here you back up. Don't give the person any. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's interesting too because Thibault's the only source I know of that actually teaches sayabiki. Like he actually talks about how to pull the sheath of the sword back to give you room to draw it.
In fact, what's interesting, if you look at that really closely,
where it's actually explained.
Yeah, he talks about, it's in one of the first sections where he teaches you how
it's
to draw.
chapter 2.
Pulls it back and he lifts the leg in order to give space.
Now, not only that, John, there's one other part that people don't pay attention to. You know how we're always drawing in Suyo? Look at his thumb. He's doing this. He's not doing this. He's doing this. Because if you take that thumb and put it on the other side, you're going to draw it this way. But he knows if you put your thumb on this side, it goes straight. It's literally that brilliant. This person is that brilliant.
This is interesting.
Okay? So you have how to draw your blade.
How to draw your blade if you're advancing, how to draw your blade if you're stepping back.
Yeah. So it's really, it's just, look, so he's got this, like I said, the handhold. And you notice it's primarily these 3 fingers. What does that sound like? Huh. Interesting, isn't it? It's really, really interesting because you've got the exact same physiology. The reason why I like the European books is I see the physiology that I never see in the Japanese works.
Yeah.
Because the Japanese works are using the brush.
Yeah.
And you can't see this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yet this is exactly what they're doing. Soke does this stuff all the time. And it wasn't until I started looking at this that I went, wait a minute, I saw Soke do that. Am I crazy or what? And I come back here and go, no.
Yeah, you can see it's relaxed in the front.
Yeah. Because if you tighten it up, it changes the entire movement here. If you're loose, it doesn't change it. If you tighten it up here, it takes this blade, it takes your hand to the outside. So this is one of the major books of fencing world. So we actually, Gary and I, are on a call sometimes twice a week with a group that are going through the entire book. And the hard part I have right now is that I'll read it. There's a fellow who did the translation on this. It's wrong. A lot of times there's errors, so I have to go back through and correct it. Drives me crazy, but he did a really good job. He got a 92. But the problem is the other 8 is just...
So we're reading one chapter a week, and so it's about a year.
Yeah, it's 40 some odd chapters, so we're doing one a week.
And there's a few holidays. So.
Yeah. I'm giving a talk this Friday on fencing, fashion, and philosophy.
How are you recording the results?
Where
You're doing quite a lot of work.
Well, you want to be invited, I'll invite you too. I'll talk to him and tell Derek to invite you. So it's just, I took this book and a couple of those I belong to a book club in St. Calvin called Zamorano Book Club. Big collectors, I mean, they're really big collectors. So they asked me to do the first presentation post-COVID. So I did this on fencing, fashion, and philosophy. And it's really interesting because this fencer cannot do all the moves that some of the other people can do because he's got this bloody rough. You cannot put your head down. That's the whole reason for it. Part 2 is he's got these flat shoes. When you get into heels, it's an entirely different methodology.
Yeah.
The Japanese fight like he does.
Yeah.
You put a heel on your shoes, try doing some of the
Yeah.
stuff we do. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because they're working either with the pedestals that are that tall or flat.
Yeah.
All right? And this guy's got flat with a little tiny heel. In fact, over there somewhere, I've got a pair of jazz shoes because they only have a heel this thick.
Yeah.
And so I get the same feeling that he would have.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think that this makes a difference. But it's massive.
I bet.
It changes the entirety of the structure.
Yeah.
If you see a lot of people like doing Sia, they're leaning forward.
Yeah.
That's why, because they're so used to practicing or walking. That's why I walk around. I don't take my shoes off because it's Japanese business.
Yeah.
I take my shoes off so I walk around so I'm flat. So I can practice my Japanese stuff because they didn't have heels.
Yeah.
So in any case, all right. So yeah, this is a little bit of. There's another 40 books in line.
This.
Oh, I want to show this one. Yeah.
Where does that come from?
This is from a book called the Maestro du Roi, the King's Writing School. It was printed in 1640, and the reason I brought it up is because I brought it for the people doing Thibault. Is because the fact that Thibault was a writing master, right? He taught people to write. He was going to write a book on writing. Look at the way he's holding his instructing. That's what I wanted to point out. Is that I'm thinking that maybe Thibault was going, because this is the way they use this is the way a symphony master and conductor and a writing master they do it this way because if they hold the blade, if they hold it this way, they can go up and down all they want to. If they hold it this way, it doesn't work. They have to move their arm. This you go, you can just feel it, right? If you hold it out this way, and if you go like this, it doesn't work. So since he was a writing master, and I saw that, actually Alex, there's a couple more plates, but they're going off to the gates, believe it or not.
What?
The gates. Alex went to the wedding.
Oh, that was the.
Yeah, and so he's giving one of these, Jennifer.
It's a nice present.
Yeah, Jennifer and Niall are both writers. They met at Stanford, and so he's got the.
Oh, that's a great
print.
gift.
So in any case, so you look at this and you see he's doing like this. And so he's doing like this. I went, well, could it possibly be that he was doing this? And he went, huh. See, he's holding it entirely different than this guy is. He's holding it entirely different than this. Oh, particularly this guy is. Here, look one. Not this one. And it's night and day difference. And so I was wondering whether or not because he was writing master, one day he was going, I wonder. He started playing with it. And,
Because in Distraza there, it's here.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
there's some.
Well, they don't know about he was in Distraught. He was
Yeah.
practicing in Spain,
Yeah.
maybe in the early 1600s. And there was a guy, I think Carranza, was teaching him how to fence.
There's
But they do a different thing.
Yeah, they do. There's a lot of people that believe that this is Distraught, just another flavor of Distraught. The Thibault's art, but not really.
Sensei,
Well,
can I see one more page? The one that had the footwork diagrams.
page one.
I just wanted to see that one more time. It reminded me of something.
That is a neat page.
This reminds me of a maximally extended Penrose diagram. And that is very cool to me. Thank you.
Magical, huh?
What's a Penrose diagram?
It's magical. Right?
The Penrose diagram is something used in modern physics. So you've seen a space-time diagram, right, where you have space as your x-axis, y, and time as your y-axis.
Mm-hmm.
So you can compress that with a Penrose diagram, so it's basically diamond-shaped. So all the relationships between objects stay the same, but you have something that compresses toward infinite time on one side and infinite space on the other.
Okay.
It describes the eternal black hole, not an actual relativistic black hole, but if you extend it out, then you can, so like let's say this is the boundary, this is the event horizon of a black hole, right? So for the maximally extended diagram, this represents space-time past that horizon.
I'm familiar with that.
So
I never heard of it before.
Oh,
Okay.
it's pretty cool. There's a way to extend it
That's
out.
neat.
So like if you were to look at it as so if it's an eternal black hole, this would be like moving backward in time. This would represent like a white hole where nothing can go in but things can escape, and then it's a black hole working that way. It looks so similar to
about the other Agrippa who wrote the work on magic and
Heinrich. Yeah.
Heinrich
I actually
Agrippa.
just got a copy of that. I'm really
Did you?
excited to read through it.
yeah, where he talked about magic and he talks about this kind of the whole thing. He also designed, by Heinrich Agrippa also designed a methodology of measuring speed that was different than everybody else was using. You know about that one? Yeah, look it up.
I've heard a little bit about it. I'm especially interested. I want to pick up his book. I forget the exact
You can tell
title,
we're all
but
knowledge.
but it's something about the true superiority of the female sex. It's like weird Renaissance proto-feminism, and I'm just really curious what this guy has to say about that because he had some wild stuff to say about a number of things. Like my personal favorite is the way you bind demons with a pentacle has nothing to do with like the star itself. It's the pentagon in the center, and those angles bind the demon to your will because mathematics is divine
Exactly.
But
fundamentally.
he pulls up really interesting things.
The
should look
machine God laid out.
Heinrich Cornelius
The world was
very
with
interesting.
It's not about the points. The points just get you the right
The
angles on
the points are basically
inscribed,
there as
shape.
window dressing. I mean, I haven't read that entire section, but he states specifically it's the angles of that pentagon on the inside that bind the demon. It's kind of cool. Super wild. If you ever want to go down a crazy rabbit hole, Renaissance magical traditions are
And Burroughs.
That's what.
It's rather a shame that they just kind of disappeared from popular culture.
Do you remember Lance? Lance Knight?
don't
He
know
was.
that I met him.
Yeah. So he was the rapier guy who was with him until COVID.
Oh wait! I think I did meet him, but very
Yeah.
very briefly.
Yeah, he was really into Renaissance magic.
Oh, I wish I met him. But that's a fairly recent rabbit hole for me lately. Like I've just been really delving into that. Been really fascinated by alchemy recently. Newton the Alchemist. Get that book. Very dry. Very worth reading.
Newton
Excellent.
the Alchemist.
Great book. Just be ready for like 10-page long diatribes about why every previous author was terrible at describing Newton's alchemy.
Oh, so it's like any freaking sword guy.
Yeah. But it's great because for me, like if you're talking about alchemy,
Are the arguments reasonable? I mean,
oh yeah, they're totally reasonable.
Richard.
It's the type of thing where like
published it.
the guy who wrote the book is at the cutting edge of
Called
research
Bad
in
Humor.
Newton's alchemy specifically. And so when you're at the cutting edge of research for anything, you're basically looking at everyone behind you going, what the hell is wrong with you? How did you miss this? And everyone else is like,
I think it's
not
about
alchemical
how
experts.
everybody
What's wrong with you?
disagrees.
But it's a fun
think
book.
I just looked at
There's another, if you're ever interested in just like magical traditions in general, it's A History of Witchcraft, Magic, and the Occult. It's a book you can get at Barnes & Noble for like $10. great book. It doesn't really go into detail about anything, but it covers everything. Well, okay, actually, it's primarily Eurasian magic. They talk very little about anything outside of that, but that's because there's just fewer written sources. But it's pretty cool.
Doesn't go into Crowley or...
There's a little bit about Crowley at the end. I haven't gotten to that section yet because I got distracted by Newton. But it's a good book. It's really enjoyable.
So that's the end of our presentation on ancient sword manuscripts and assorted strange topics.